Hey, Lindsay, I'm super excited to have you join me for this episode of Coffee with Closers.
So happy to be here, Sam. Thanks for having me.
Most certainly. Well, I'm excited to kind of talk to somebody who's a super genius when it comes to LinkedIn, but we certainly want to get there. But you had an interesting story of how you got to where you are and became this LinkedIn Lindsay. So, can you share with our audience a little bit about your journey of how you got here?
Yeah, absolutely. I did not think that I would become an entrepreneur and do what I do today. But as fate would have it, our past lead us up to where we are. And I actually thought in high
Hmm.
school that I wanted to be an architect, Sam. And I went to architecture camp in high school for a whole week and learned that you've got to be pretty good at
Hmm.
math to be an architect.
Hmm.
And I'm not very good at math. So I thought, okay, I'll just enjoy and appreciate architecture. And then in college, got my Bachelor of Science at Clemson, go Tigers, and became a graphic designer. And thought that that was going to be my path. Thankfully, that major at Clemson requires you to do 2 internships before you graduate. So having that internship experience in college as a designer made me realize I did not
Hmm.
want to become a designer. It was really frustrating for me to put my heart and soul into a really cool design and not have a voice behind why my boss or team should select my design. And so it was very clear that sales was going to be the path that I launched my career after college. And I stayed in the printing industry. I mean, literally sold ink on paper, which
Hmm.
actually is custom manufacturing. So, Sam, if you said, "Hey, Lindsay, can you reprint the same thing you did for me 3 years ago?" Well, there's about 18,000 variables that go into a printed product. And so the chances of me getting it perfectly are not very high. Not to mention that there's dozens of people behind me that produce that product, and so there's a lot of lack of control. So I became a really good
Hmm.
salesperson, a really good mediator, a really good communicator, and that was all before having any type of sales training. So I was very, very fortunate to go into the startup world and work for a SaaS company in sales. And I
Hmm.
got some formal sales training, and that has rocked my world. I'd be remiss, Sam, if I didn't give Walker McKay a shout out. He is actually in the process of publishing his book, and so far I've gotten the teaser of it. It's phenomenal. So for all the your listeners and audience, be on the lookout for Walker McKay's book.
Hmm.
Some will, some won't. So what? Who's next? And the rest is kind of history. I mean, there's more there, but you can
Yeah,
poke and
kind
prod,
of
and I'm happy
similar
to
story
share.
for me as well. I loved architectural, like just architect in general, but I didn't pursue that career. But I still I'm mesmerized. I live in Chicago, so we're surrounded by all these high rise buildings. So I always wonder, like, how do they do this? How do they do that? And just amazing architecture in Chicago. Yeah, so
It's
I love that. And I
fascinating.
also
Yeah.
tour,
Have you done
yes,
the
yes, I have.
architecture boat
Yeah, on the
tour?
riverside. Yeah, and then
Yes, it's
Chicago just
incredible.
keep changing its landscape every year, right? So there's more buildings in the making. There's two more that's coming. So it's always amazing to just watch that. But I also had a little bit of start in print myself. So I worked for my uncle who had a print shop. So got my hands dirty in print, learned the hard way, right? But it is actually a very interesting industry to be in
Yes.
because it does prepare you for a lot of other industry because it is
Mhm.
sales, it is marketing, it is advertising, it is all of that. You got to have good eye for design. You have to have good eye for messaging
Yeah.
and even just typography and all of those things. It's very interesting start to have. So I'm happy to hear that. So you actually had worked in the SaaS world. So how did you then kind of discovered there's this path to be had and money to be made by coaching people on LinkedIn?
Well, I was a user myself, and I say that in the non-drug addict, sense that I was a LinkedIn salesperson, meaning that I was using it as a tool in my tool belt to prospect, to attract my ideal audience, to get again at bats in my calendar with people who I could potentially help and between us and your audience sell to. And so I had a lot of success. I mean, again, first year out of college, selling ink on paper and hitting 1 million in revenue within the first 6 months. LinkedIn was a part of that, actually. And For those of you who, are like, wow, Lindsay, you must be a lot younger. Well, LinkedIn's actually been around longer than Facebook. A lot of people don't realize that. And while many people in business thought that LinkedIn was just a place that you go to post your job. Again, this was 2 decades ago. It was actually already back then a place to prospect and nurture your relationships. And so, fast forward to, realizing that there was a market to help entrepreneurs and other sales executives and professionals to have the kind of success that I had myself experienced. I had developed a lot of processes and systems, and identified really quickly that a lot of people are pretty intimidated by the tool even today. Obviously, we probably wouldn't have a business if it wasn't a challenging tool to sometimes figure out. And LinkedIn is a software company, so they are never in a state of perfection. They are always iterating. Reid Hoffman is one of the co-founders of LinkedIn, and he wrote a book wrote a book called The Startup of You. And I'll always remember, Sam, one of the principles in that book. The whole book was not about LinkedIn, but certainly a part of it was. But one of the ideas that Reid mentioned and introduced to me was this idea of perpetual beta. And it's this idea that we are never in a state of perfection. We are always iterating and learning and growing and evolving. And that's really how LinkedIn operates. Even since 2016, when LinkedIn was acquired by Microsoft for $26.2 billion, which, by the way, for anyone who's listening, thinks that LinkedIn might go away, they ain't going anywhere. So I like to joke that thankfully, I'm not in the business of twisting people's arm that LinkedIn's a powerful business tool. It is, and you can either jump on board or not. And, for the first time in years and years and years, Sam, I had a speaking engagement up in the Northeast, and my client, a leader of a very successful business, actually was not and is not on LinkedIn. And he said, I just know myself well enough. And if I was on there, I wouldn't take it seriously. I'd probably only be on there 5% of what I should and could be. So I'm not on there at all. And I said, you know what? That's exactly the right reason not to be on the platform, right? So if you're not going to take it seriously, if you're not going to see it as a tool in the tool belt that can be profitable, then you might want to consider getting off of it altogether. Now, you and I both know, because I know you're a big advocate of LinkedIn, you're probably missing out, right, on a lot of new people to meet and relationships to nurture. But I'm okay if you choose not to for those reasons.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly want to get into some tactical ways of leveraging
Sure.
LinkedIn, but I'm also curious to learn a little bit about that entrepreneurial journey, right? So you obviously had success in sales, and you figured out LinkedIn was one of your success, secrets, and then you saw an opportunity where you can coach others to actually go do a better job with their LinkedIn profiles. So how did you then figure out, well, I need to monetize what I know and then turn that into almost a business offering?
Well, I'll never forget my first two clients. My husband, I had never been, even though I had been in sales my whole career up to that point, I had never been 100% commission. And
Mm,
so, I was newly married, and my husband had a lot of faith in me. And I said, we got to run the numbers, because I don't know how long it's going to take me to earn $1.
mhm.
So, we had the exit strategy before we even said yes, or before I said yes. And, honestly, Sam, thank goodness it took 2 weeks, got my
Hmm.
first two clients, and the rest is history. When you have intellectual property that can tremendously impact and influence somebody's life, people will pay for that
Hmm.
information and that knowledge. And I really am in the camp of equipping our clients with how to leverage the tool. Now,
Hmm.
we do have a 5-step trademark process that's an engagement where it's more of a done for you service. Regarding, you had mentioned regarding the profile, but beyond that, I am a coach, and
Hmm.
I coach my clients how and their teams how to use it. And that's exactly it. We're not managing LinkedIn accounts.
Hmm.
It sounds like a nightmare that I'm not interested in living. So, I'm a teacher, and I teach people how to use the tool independently and confidently on their own.
Yeah, so I think when you obviously started the business, right? You said within a week you got that first two customers. What were the steps that you took to say, "Hey, I'm open for business. I'm here to do coaching and consulting for anyone who wants to use my expertise.
Yeah, well, the funny thing is, and I'll probably come full circle to your question, but I'll never forget a good friend of mine. He had already started his consulting business, and I was like, where do I even start? Well, I don't even know like how to hang a shingle, you know. And not that I needed a brick and mortar for my kind of work. I was working out of my home office, and I actually say that. I was working from home before it became a hashtag. Um, I he said the first thing you need is a business checking account so that you can accept payment.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, okay, noted, right? You don't want to do free consulting. So
Mm-hmm.
especially in the beginning as you're, trying to make a living doing this. So, I think it's a matter of asking the right questions, identifying um, where people have a bigger vision and future
Mm-hmm.
for themselves, and it's not where they are today. And so I knew that I could help bridge that gap in this one area of people's lives and in their business. So when I would say, things, and Sam, you've got a great presence on LinkedIn, but so I'll pick on you, right? You're not a candidate for this kind of consulting and help, but I might say, well, Sam, normally people will come to us and they'll say things like, gosh, I know that I could look better on this platform, but I don't even know where to start. Or I'm such a terrible writer. Or, I'm so well known in my industry, amongst my clients, amongst my peers. And I have no idea how to translate that on this thing called LinkedIn or online at all.
Mm-hmm.
Or I'll say, so I'll just kind of paint these pictures. And then I would say, Sam, do any of those resonate with you? I'm just curious. And then you'd say, well, yeah, all of them, right? Or, well, this one or this one. And then we would go into just a dialogue, and
Mm-hmm.
really the conversations lead to the curiosity, I should say, leads to oftentimes, not always, because we're not a fit for everyone,
Mm-hmm.
a recommendation of how it might look like to work together. And I think to answer your question another way is that people don't know how to hire us.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody in my 10 plus years, 12 years of doing this has a LinkedIn budget.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, some might have some version of it, right? Whether it's a budget for a professional speaker or a training budget, or a leadership budget, but nobody has in their P&L LinkedIn budget. And so it's really painting the picture that it just so happens this is the tool that we help our clients through,
Mm-hmm.
but it's peeling back the curtain on what are those things that they're really trying to do in their business to move the needle.
Yeah. So how do you distinguish what you offer from some of those other companies that say, "Oh, we'll teach you how to do social selling," and it was like a big hot topic in the last 4 or 5 years, and it's kind of changing now. But how do you
Sure.
distinguish what you do from what some of those other companies teach and
Yeah,
train?
well, absolutely. Well, part of it is learning what people have done already. So I would say, Sam, where did this curiosity of LinkedIn come from? Oh,
Mm-hmm.
well, I hired a consultant before and it was a disaster. Or I worked with this company and they didn't live up to their expectation, right? So I
Mm-hmm.
get a little bit of that backstory of what their previous experience has been with the platform up to this point. And I've heard a lot of different stories. So that's some intelligence. When somebody says, well, Lindsay, I'm really looking to build my pipeline and get 1,000 leads in my pipeline and every single month. Well, I don't know about you, Sam, but
Mm-hmm.
I'm a human with a heartbeat. I'm not a robot, and
Mm-hmm.
LinkedIn is full of humans with heartbeats as well. And so I say, you know what, Sam, like um, that's not a necessarily a wrong approach, but that's not the approach that we take with
Mm-hmm.
LinkedIn. We take more of a human to human approach where, we slow down the outreach to increase the outcome. And then I just see if that resonates, right? Does that resonate?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, well, I don't think I could handle 1,000 leads. You're right. Or
Mm-hmm.
no, we really have this different direction. And then you just learn if you're a fit for somebody or not. So it just goes back, Sam, for me to asking those questions. And, I'll say in the LinkedIn expert world, the LinkedIn guru world, there's generally speaking two schools of thought.
Mm-hmm.
One is connect with everybody. The more, you may have heard the term lion, accept everyone in your network. And it's all about, maxing out and becoming an influencer. Well, that's not even really a term on LinkedIn anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's this other school and other kind of school of thought, which is, well, if I actually know the majority of the people, not all, but the majority of the people in my network, then I can more authentically and genuinely connect them to other people, to be an actual value add, and really have true relationships where, for example, you and I, Sam, we're connected on LinkedIn, but we actually have an offline relationship, right?
Hmm.
We've connected over Zoom and have had conversations. So I am in the camp of, again, having that human to human relationship, and that tends to resonate with the people that are the folks that we help, because they're in the human to human business as well. So again, we're not for everyone, and that's okay.
Yeah.
That, I think that's just being okay with not being, all things to all people.
Yeah, and I think for me as well. As soon as I look at the pending invitations, I just usually just look at the job titles, and I can already tell what that next email is going to be like as soon as I accept that invitation. So I have anxiety just when I see those invites, and I used to just accept everything, but lately I just noticed that there's just so much noise when I go to my profile. Like when you're seeing all the feed, it's just all the people that I had connected with in the past, and some of those conversations have nothing to do with what I do day to day. So I'm almost intentionally not wanting to accept random people anymore, right? Because it just gets a little bit of
Yeah.
a mess.
Yeah, and I've heard that too. And so we have another trademark process called the Crown Method, and that's where
Hmm.
we help clients with their existing LinkedIn network. We call it more warm network marketing, to squeeze some intentional juice out of that existing network of first degree connections. And
Hmm.
some part, right, of that process is deciding who it makes sense to still be connected to.
Hmm.
When I moved from the DC metro area down to South Carolina, when I transitioned from the printing industry to software as a service and selling to global consumer brands, my network evolved, my network changed. And so it's not that the intention of LinkedIn should be to go from 10,000 people you don't know to 200, right? There's a lot that can be lost, but it's
Hmm.
really saying, well, are we adding value to each other? And also getting curious. A lot of times I've seen, when I coach clients on how to do the Crown Method, they'll say, gosh, there's so many people who I meant to follow up with and start a conversation with, or I had tried and I didn't get anywhere. So now they're back on my radar. It's this idea that it's okay to be more thoughtful and intentional. And even with you going back to your invitations, I mean, gosh, I get invitations from people I don't know all the time as well. And sometimes it's very clear that I don't want to add them to my network because I take a
Hmm.
more curated approach. But some people, I kind of am curious. In
Hmm.
fact, earlier this year, there was an individual who reached out, didn't tell me how he knew me, which, by the way, personalizing that invitation and really beyond, hey Samuel, I'd like to add you to my network. Like,
Hmm.
let's be a little bit more thoughtful. But this person, even though he didn't personalize his invite, I looked at his profile, and at the time I was looking at adding another team member with his skill set. And so I did accept his invitation, and I followed up to him, which isn't always the case, right?
Hmm.
Technically, especially if you're the salesperson, you send the invite, the person accepts, then it's your job to follow up. But in this case, I followed up with him. Well, you know what happened? In about not even an hour of me accepting and reaching out to him, I got a sales pitch.
Hmm.
And I wrote him back and I said, gosh, I am super disappointed, because it was obvious that there was an automation tool that was
Hmm.
sending the messaging, and because my message wasn't even acknowledged. And I said, I'm really bummed that
Hmm.
this isn't, going to be in alignment. And I was kind about it, but I think it's because people want that quick fix. They want to use AI and think that's an immediate solution, use automation, think that it's an immediate solution. Again, none of those are bad tools, but we have to have realistic expectations about them.
Hmm.
So yeah, I could probably go on for another 20 minutes, but I know you have
Yeah.
more questions to
Yeah,
ask.
I do have a hack myself for catching these kind
What's
of
that?
robots. So if you look at my LinkedIn profile name, in my first name, I have an emoji, which is a rain, like an umbrella. So every time I get an invitation, hi Samuel, with an umbrella next to it, right? I know immediately that was an automated message because they didn't even bother to look at my profile name and notice that there was an emoji in my name. So immediately when I see that messages, I can tell that it was an automated robot message and not a personalized message.
Okay, let me make sure I'm following.
Hmm.
So when you receive an inbound,
Hmm.
whether it's an invitation or an in-mail, and it has the emoji, you know that it's
Yeah, because my
automated?
first name, I put an emoji of an
I
umbrella
saw
in
that.
the name. And so
Hmm.
when they actually personalize it, average person, if they don't have any emoji in there, yeah, you can just think it is personalized to you. But it's very clear to me that they use some sort of an automation tool because they didn't actually exclude that emoji in their invitation emails or even just the follow ups. Because I do have LinkedIn Navigator. So because of that, I think
Uh-huh.
I have an open profiles. So there's a lot of people that
Yep.
just send the free messages. I leave it open just because you just never know.
Yeah,
Someone might be
absolutely.
emailing, but because of some people use automation, they're sending me a lot of messages that are just open mail, right? And then I can
Hmm.
immediately tell when they're using my LinkedIn name as the variable and just not
Yes.
even verifying that I have an
Yeah,
emoji there.
clever.
So it's a hack that I
Clever. I
use
love
just to avoid all these spammers from
I
filling
love
my
that. And
inbox.
you might have this turned on. I believe it's a defaulted setting, but LinkedIn now has, and they've had it for a while now, but it's called the other inbox. So
Yeah, which I do
now,
have it. Yeah. So it's a little difficult
so,
sometimes because now you got like three different places, like your focused inbox, and then you have your other inbox. So it's a
and
little bit
Sales
difficult.
Navigator inbox. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Which I hope they
For
can
sure.
consolidate that. That is a pain in the neck too, because Sales Navigator is completely a separate box, and I usually forget
Yes.
about it because I'm not often opening up to go check that one. So you've
Yeah,
met.
and actually to speak to that, if that's okay, if you
Yeah,
don't
yeah.
mind,
Please.
yeah. So the what we're talking about for the folks that are like, okay, Sam and Lindsay just went on this tangent. We don't know what they're talking about.
Hmm.
Inside of LinkedIn, you may or may not have noticed that. And I always, Sam, when you're on the desktop and you get that little pop up on the right hand
Hmm.
side of your messages, I really personally don't manage my inbox with that little pop up on the right side. I
Hmm.
go into the messaging page, the full page, and that's where you'll see that other inbox. So,
Hmm.
what Sam and I are referring to is when you get an inquiry or an inbound, Sam, I also have open profile turned on. Since you
Hmm.
and I are LinkedIn Premium subscribers, we're able to have open profile, which means people who are not connected to us yet can send us a message. And I agree with you. I actually have had prospects who've become clients who actually thought they were connecting with me, but turns out they were just sending me a message. And we
Hmm.
started a conversation, got on the phone. They became a client only because I had the other open profile turned on. But
Hmm.
as you said, and I experience as well, many of those inbound messages are spammy and not for me. So I just filter
Hmm.
them to the other inbox. Now, as far as Sales Navigator goes, yes, I could not agree with you more. I hope at some point they will consolidate, maybe make them one inbox but different colors. I think the
Hmm.
solution exists. It just they haven't put
Yeah.
the development dollars behind it. But Sam, one way that I use Sales Navigator, and again, it's not necessarily the only approach, but one way that I use it is I actually only use my sales nav inbox
Hmm.
for prospects and people who have not accepted my invitation. So
Hmm.
my first step in outbound as it relates to LinkedIn, I'm still incorporating the other communication channels of phone and email and text and all the things. But I lead with the invitation on LinkedIn first because, Sam, if you accept my invitation, well, then, as you
Hmm.
know, we're just exchanging direct messages. I reserve my in-mail messages for really kind of that plan C, plan D, and I send those through my Sales Navigator account. So my Sales Nav inbox is actually quite a bit quieter than
Hmm.
my LinkedIn inbox. I'm curious, do you have a process of how you distinguish using this?
Yeah, I do let, I think it accumulates the in mails, but I never really maximize my in mail. I usually just use LinkedIn Navigator
Mm-hmm.
just for sourcing contacts and then using it in
Mm-hmm.
sequencing in other tools just to be able to do those advanced searches or maybe setting up
Yes.
alerts for some organizations or individuals
Beautiful.
that we're following. We also have I particularly have like my existing customers and past
Mm-hmm.
customer contacts on a list just to monitor their job changes if they ever do change companies, just to be alerted if they left that organization. But that's about the extent of my use of LinkedIn Navigator. I know there's a lot more advanced stuff that I can do, but I don't 100% just focus my
Sure.
day on prospecting. I have someone else who does and then helps me with booking meetings. I just needed to have LinkedIn Navigator. So if I needed to do searches and things like that, I can do it. Or if I needed to ping somebody in mail. But I don't know, maybe people are definitely leveraging that in mail, but I don't think there's enough. If you were to actually just only use whatever they give you, there isn't enough in mails.
So yeah, the way that InMail works is, and by the way, for everyone listening, Sam is using Sales Navigator really, really well. So take note from him. He's checked all the boxes. Sam. Yeah, I agree. Probably, I'm sure there's more that you could do, but for the way you're leveraging it, like gold star, a plus student. But regarding InMail, the way that InMail works is they work in a rollover sequence, meaning if I've sent you an InMail and you and I are not connected yet, you have 90 days to accept, decline, or just respond to that InMail that I've sent you. If you take any of those three actions, accept, which is the pre-populated
Hmm.
response, decline, a pre-populated response, or a unique message back to me. If you do any three of those things within 90 days of me sending it, I actually get that
Hmm.
InMail credit back to use on somebody else. Now, if you take no action within 90 days, I lose that
Hmm.
credit altogether. So it banks up to 3 months. But yeah, you really, if any of our listeners have ever run out of InMails, then there's some work to be done, and you should never
Hmm.
run out of InMails for that exact reason, because they replenish if you're using good language when you're outreaching.
Yeah, I think it's probably more personalization and more engaging message, right? That people actually would have to
Mm-hmm.
say yes or no or some sort of response.
Mm-hmm.
That's probably
Mm-hmm.
there. And I lost my train of thought. I think I had a question that was follow up, but basically, you mentioned two different trademarked frameworks or methodology. Can you elaborate on the first one that you've kind of mentioned in passing? I know you've mentioned the second one about kind of cleaning up
Sure.
your profile. What was the first one that you mentioned?
Well, so the profile is the profile
Mm-hmm.
transformer. That is an engagement that we have taken 1,000 people through at this point, which is just wild to think about.
Mm-hmm.
And that is our process where we schedule a 60-minute phone interview. Again, we'll use you as the guinea pig, Sam. You and I would have that 60-minute phone call. Leading up to that interview,
Mm-hmm.
I'm gathering any assets from you, things that might be helpful to help me understand your story, whether it's bios, videos. Some clients are like, I got nothing. I'm like, you're good. I'm the pro, let me do my work. So
Mm-hmm.
in that second step of having the interview, I'm really doing a couple of things: pulling out your story, how you got to where you are, why you do what you do, who you're trying to attract, what your purpose is, and then secondly, fill in all of the more than 24 sections that could apply to you in the LinkedIn profile. And thirdly, making it a visually interesting and engaging experience, because just because someone lands on your profile doesn't mean they're going to stay there. So we have to show up in a search result. Just like Google loves keywords, so does LinkedIn. So filling out that completely. And I personally, again, it's one approach. I am not one who believes in filling up the profile with a bunch of keywords. It's just a bit tacky in my opinion, and it's overused in an outdated approach. But you're going to increase your likelihood of coming up in a search result when you have that profile completely built out. Then they get into your profile and you've captivated their attention, and then you're giving them those calls to action, whether it's educating them, trying to get a phone call scheduled, the content that you're publishing, reaching out to, you name it. And so after that second step interview, step three is the first part of my heavy lifting. I write and design your entire profile based on that conversation and what you've sent over. And so it's a lot of work, but that's what we're hired for. Step four, our clients come in, and at this point, they've only invested 1 hour on the phone with me, and then that review. On average, our clients only need 20 minutes to review that post interview deliverable, because there's no surprises, right? It's all based on our conversation. It's a step in the process they look forward to. I actually just got an email yesterday that was like, Lindsay, you're such an incredible writer. This is amazing. Option 2 here, option 3 here. What's our next step? And I'd say, Sam, so good. I've reviewed everything. I don't have any questions. I'm ready to get the launch process started. Do I have your green light? And you'd say, yes, green light. So that fifth and final step, Sam, is we log into our clients' LinkedIn accounts, shut down the appropriate settings. So we're not blasting their network with all those updates. And we actually launch their profile for them. So we're not just doing the work and saying, here you go figure it out. We're actually seeing it through completion. That whole process only takes 3 weeks. And then you get this email that says, Sam, your launch, here's your before snapshot, which I said earlier, you're not a good candidate for. But, if you had a lot of gaps and holes and outdated information and you weren't leveraging the tool, all the things, you're probably a good candidate. And your profile was probably mediocre before we worked together. And then you get this after snapshot. It's long and built out and interesting. And you're like, oh my gosh, Lindsay, you made me look amazing. And I'd say, Sam, you're already amazing. I just brought it to life, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's our goal. And it's really fun to bring clients through that experience and make them feel like their true selves. Some of it, it's interesting, Sam, is very therapeutic. I'll be in interviews and clients are like, well, I haven't said it on LinkedIn because fill in the blank, or I'm not sure if I should talk about this because of that. And part of my job is to be a little bit of a fairy godmother and say, no, you can talk about this, and here's how we can position it. And they're like, oh, I never knew I could do that. I never knew I could position it that way. So it's a great experience, great process. And yeah, like I said, it's a done for you approach. And then the other trademark process, Sam, is something that not all clients who go to the coaching engagement, but some do. So, for example, after our interview together today for your show, I'm doing a training session with a client who wants to squeeze some juice out of their existing network. And so I'm going to take them through the crown method. And the crown method is a very specific process where we help clients very intentionally do something
Mm-hmm.
with each person in their network. So it's, again, very rewarding. I had one client who booked 40 meetings in 1 month through the
Wow.
crown method alone, which is super cool. So, and we've got lots of other success stories like it.
Yeah, I mean that's pretty impressive, and I think it's very, very hands-on from what you're describing in terms of how you
Mm-hmm.
help them through. I mean, I think the crown method might be something I need because I have close to about 12,000 connections, and I think I need to clean up the mess a little bit because
Yeah.
over the years it just random people send invite and I accept it, and now I don't know who's who. It certainly is
Yeah.
a little bit of a challenge. Nobody, if it's like going to a conference, you have 11,000 people, you're not going to build a relationship with 11,000 people. You just got to find
Right.
those handful of people that really are meaningful people to connect with. So obviously, you said you helped over 1,000 people go through that profile audit, and then having helped them. What are some common mistakes that you've seen people make with their LinkedIn? Obviously, not just sending invitation and immediately pitching sales. That's everybody knows that's cardinal sin. But what are some other
Yeah.
mistakes that you see people make? Pretty simple mistakes.
Yeah. I think it's, so I'll give you a great example. I was on a call earlier this morning, and really successful business owner, and he's like, I don't know what I'm missing. I don't understand what the gap is. And I'm like, well, tell me more. And he goes, I think we're putting really good content out there, but nothing's happening. It's like crickets. Well, what we've when we took a peek under the hood, what we identified very clearly and publicly, right? So I'm looking at his presence on LinkedIn. I'm not logged into his account. Everything that I'm auditing is public knowledge. And Sam, what we found was he was right. It's not that the content he was posting was bad or not good enough, but there were several elements that were missing, such as he was only posting content about himself and about his business. And guess what? Nobody cares. I'll pick on myself. Nobody cares about LinkedIn as much as I do. So if I were only to post about LinkedIn on LinkedIn all the time, it would be a snooze fest. But here's what I challenged this client on. I said, but who are you trying to attract and have conversations with? And he goes, well, leaders and high net worth individuals and professionals who are trying to take their careers to the next level. And I said, well, what do you think? What are some of the things you help them with? And he goes, well, I help them, with planning and time management, and we just started to uncover these different topics that he knows his clients are struggle with, some of which he is an expert in, some of which he's not, but he knows that they struggle with that. And I said, do you struggle with those things too as a business owner and leader? He goes, oh yeah, I'm always trying to get better. I said, this is the kind of content that your network also wants to hear from you about, right? It's not just the LinkedIn Lindsay show. It's also, well, people want to see that I'm a human being, and they want to see, that hear about the things that I'm working on and trying to get better at. They want to see, they want to learn about leadership tactics that I've implemented in my life because they're leaders as well. So, Sam, what I see is people having good intentions, but they're not really stepping back to see the whole picture and how it all, interacts and intertwines. I mean, the other thing that this individual was missing was that the last time he engaged with anybody else's content was 6 months ago.
Mm.
I'm like, you're looking, and this guy is so nice, Sam. He is such a good man. He is philanthropic. He's doing great things for his community and his clients. And he looks like a self-serving
Mm-hmm.
person.
Yeah.
We'll just leave it at that, right? And so he goes, well, what do you mean? I said, well, you got to show that you care about other people, right? He goes, yeah, all the time. Like, I'm giving money here, I'm doing this, I'm calling, I'm mailing birthday gifts. And I said, you got to translate some of that care and curiosity and genuine interest to this platform, which is engaging with people's content, sharing their content, right? Being interested in what they're doing in this online ecosystem. So those are just a couple of things that, again, happened just this morning.
Yeah. So the other question I have is that there's a lot of misconception. Obviously, there's multiple schools of thoughts in terms of the amount of content you need to put on LinkedIn, which sometimes paralyzes people, right? Like, how on earth am I going to find the time to come up with really good quality content and post consistently and do all of those things? What have you seen as the bare minimum activity from a content production that you need to have to show that you are alive and well, that you're still in business?
Yeah. Yes, for sure. So I love that. It's like, have they been eaten by an alligator?
Yes.
Are they still alive? So I've got a LinkedIn routine checklist. I actually have a resource for Sales Navigator too, because I get asked that question all the time. I know you're specifically, Sam, asking about content, but obviously, like I just shared, it's
Mm-hmm.
not just the content that we're posting, it's also those other activities. But at bare minimum,
Mm-hmm.
I want to see you put something on this massive global, really influential platform once a week,
Mm-hmm.
just once a week. Now, here's the catch. So I had a client, this was, gosh, a decade ago. He said, Lindsay, I really only want to go into LinkedIn at 60 minutes, 1 day a week.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, John, are you willing to compromise?
Mm-hmm.
He goes, well, yeah, that's why we're talking. And I said, well, what if we took that 60 minutes and we spread it out over the course of 5 days?
Mm-hmm.
And how about instead of the 60 minutes once a week, we spread it out? What's 60 divided by 5? What, 12 or something?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it's 12. No, that's 60. Yeah, it's 60 minutes, 12, right? Let's take 12 minutes a day, 10 to 12 minutes a day. And Sam, you know as well as I do, sometimes it doesn't even have to be 10 minutes a
Mm-hmm.
day, right? But let's show up consistently every day, not to just be a consumer and an observer, but to actually engage with other people, whether it's indirect messages and publicly on their content. Let's refresh parts of our profile, right? And here's the other thing, getting in that habit and that pattern of just a little bit every day. It's just like the James Clear Atomic Habits,
Mm-hmm.
1% better every day, and then it compounds. LinkedIn changes all of the time. So when people are like, Lindsay, how did you know that about LinkedIn? Like, do you have like an IV hooked up, and LinkedIn's feeding you this information? I'm like, no, but I'm in it every day.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm aware, like when things look different or something changes, I'm aware because I'm in it consistently. So I'll step off the soapbox now. Hopefully that was helpful.
Yeah, and I think it's almost like the sales strategy, right? Like time blocking a certain amount of time every day so that you have consistency in your output, whether that's producing content or commenting on other people. So that shows that you are engaging, you're actually active on this platform, which is super critical.
Absolutely.
We can certainly sit here and talk a lot more about LinkedIn, but I'm just also curious.
Yeah.
Obviously, you've learned a lot of big lessons in building your organization, and you've grown to the level that you're in today. What's one of the biggest lessons you've learned as an entrepreneur? in building this
Oh my
consultancy?
gosh. I can't tell you biggest because to me the big ones are all feel like the biggest,
Hmm.
but I will tell you one that is more recent for me, Sam. So I would say on a monthly basis, I meet somebody or a good friend will say, "Oh my gosh, Lindsay, you should be scaling your business." So I've thought that for 10 plus years that that was my responsibility. Scale, scale, scale as big as you can.
Hmm.
And it's not that I am not doing that or that I won't do that, but the way I was trying to scale, Sam, was in a way that sucked my energy, that wasn't life giving to me and for me. That didn't have sticking and staying power. So, in some ways, I'm actually grateful the way that I've tried to scale twice now didn't work out because I probably would have eventually found out that it wasn't the right approach for me. So, what I would say the lesson is as you're, and listen, you know as well as I do being an entrepreneur, you've got to test things out. You don't know if the shoe's going to fit until you try it on. So don't be afraid to test things for a period of time. And then what I would say is audit the energy and how you felt doing it,
Hmm.
because I was doing quote unquote all the right things. But what I didn't ask myself was, how did that feel? You know, did I get life from that or did I just get completely sucked dry from it? So I think that's how I'm approaching new ideas and opportunities in my business, is really taking into consideration the energy that it's going to require and take from me or give to me.
Hmm. That's a good way to approach it because a lot of times I think the temptation is when you see these entrepreneurs claiming that they multiply their business by whatever X, that you feel like you're not measuring up, you're not succeeding, right? But you also need to know, is this the right growth trajectory for your business, right? Like some people don't need to have, 100X, 10X, right? We all read the book, 10X is easier than
Yeah.
2X. But I don't know,
Yeah.
you got to ask yourself what is right for you as an entrepreneur.
Well, and what is 10x?
Hmm.
10x can be revenue. It can also be freedom.
That's true.
It can also be time. It can
Yeah.
also be relationships, right? So 10x, I can still 10x my business without actually scaling.
Hmm.
The way that society and business says and thinks that I should. $1 million in revenue with 30K at the bottom net profit compared to, 500,000 and 300K net profit. Who's more successful?
Hmm.
Like I think it's
Exactly.
being thoughtful, and just deciding what works for you, and all of it's okay. There's not a wrong or right way to do it. It's
Yeah.
just really owning what way is the right way for you.
That's why I like the Simon Sinek's book on, I think I forgot the leaders is last. Is that the one? I can't remember which one. He talks about, I no, I think it's in the Infinite Game book. He talked about the whole
Yes.
concept of the whatever Microsoft and Apple is playing completely different games. They have completely different rules. So there's no comparison of like you don't need to compare yourself to a competition because
Mhm.
it's your own rule that you set. Like if you
That's right.
succeeded because you surpassed a certain target that you had, then you're not competing with anybody else. I think that perception is very important, so you don't feel like beat up sometimes when you see your
Absolutely.
competitors succeed. I wanted to kind of end with one question. So, knowing what you know today, what advice would you give you the younger Lindsay?
Oh, this feels cheesy, but honestly, Sam, it's just the truth that it's okay to have fun and let your hair down. It's okay to let things be easy. I so much of my career have been really tightly wound, and I've got to push, 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 and drive, 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 and work, work, work. And if I'm not exhausted by the end of the day, I didn't try hard enough. And the reality is, it gets to be easy, like it gets to be fun if you choose for it to be. So, I really listen, work ethic, and when you're young, putting in that time and sweat equity is very important. So I'm not here to say that any of the by age younger folks, if you will, shouldn't be putting in their time, because you should. That's how you learn. I think I just held on to that a little bit longer than I should have, and I'm grateful that now I'm getting in this habit of releasing that expectation, and just saying, like, I had a full day today, but I enjoyed it. It was fun. It was exhausting and exhilarating, and I don't have to feel beat up at the end of the day for it to be a productive and successful day.
That's awesome. So where could people learn more about your offerings and probably find out more about how they can get some LinkedIn help?
Yeah, well, as you know, I mean, holler at me on LinkedIn, add a personalized note. I think that, Sam, what's been really interesting when I get to speak on podcasts is this is the tip that I will give. Uh, on the LinkedIn desktop, when you go and find me on LinkedIn, Lindsay McMillian Steeman, uh, go into my profile, then click the connect button and add a note. Or if you're on the mobile app, click more and then personalize invite and tell me that you heard me on your show, Sam, so that I know who you are and where you came from, or engage with my content. Be like, Lindsay, I just heard you on Sam's podcast episodes. Awesome. So that I know who you are and I can make that connection. Because otherwise, we might miss an opportunity to chat. Of course, I've got my website, Sam McMillian. It's literally mcmillionconsulting.com. There's a contact page, and happy to have a conversation, see who I can help.
Well, thank you so much, Lindsay. I appreciate you sharing your life lesson and wisdom with my audience.
Thank you so much, Sam. Pleasure to be here.
This episode of Coffee with Closers is brought to you by One IMS, a leading digital marketing agency helping businesses win new customers. To request a free marketing ROI audit, please visit oneims.com. If you enjoyed this video, please share it. To make sure you never miss an episode, please subscribe.